Let's take a look at promises introduced in ES6. A promise object represents the eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation and its resulting value. A promise is a proxy for a value not necessarily known when the promise is created. It allows you to associate handlers with asynchronous actions, eventual success value, or failure reason. This lets asynchronous methods return values like synchronous methods, instead of immediately returning the final value. The asynchronous method returns a promise to supply the value at some point in the future. A promise is in one of these states: pending, fulfilled, or rejected. Creating a promise object is created using the new keyword and its constructor. The new constructor takes as an argument a function called the executor function. This function should take two functions as parameters. The first of these functions, resolve, is called when the asynchronous task completes successfully and returns the result of the task as a value. The second, reject, is called when the task fails and returns the value for failure, which is typically an error object. Let's see what that looks like in code. So the first example we have is to show why promises are needed. So we're going to say const print color equals an arrow function that takes in the color, and we're going to console.log color. To demonstrate slow asynchronous actions like reading a database or calling an API, we're going to use the set timeout function a lot in this lesson. We're going to say const slow function equals an arrow function that takes no parameters, and inside of here we're going to say set timeout set timeout takes an arrow function, and inside of here we're going to say return blue, but I only want to return blue after 3 seconds. And so down here we're going to say const color equals slow function. So this will return blue after 3 seconds. And then I want to say print color and I want to pass it the color that I just got above to print. So what I would expect here is after 3 seconds, slow function returns blue. I capture that in this variable called color, and then I pass color to print color, and it should print blue right here. Let's see what actually happens. So what I get is undefined, and then 3 seconds later it resolves. That's because print color, when I pass color to it, the color here is still undefined because slow function is yet to return blue. This is why asynchronous behavior needs things like promises. Let's take a look at how this is handled with a promise. So we're going to say const print color, or print a color, equals a function that takes in a color, and this will console.log the color. I'm going to comment out the first example so that we don't see it run in a second. And then down here I'm going to say const my first promise equals new promise, and inside of here I have two things. I have resolve and I have reject. And so here I'm going to say set timeout, and this again takes an arrow function. So I want to resolve success after 3 seconds. And then here we're going to say my first promise dot then. So I get a message. This is what's resolved here. I want to console.log a template literal that says yay and then I want a template, or I want to print my success message. Let's run this before we go any further. So it should wait 3 seconds and then it should print yay success. Let's walk through how this worked one time. So my first promise, after 3 seconds, resolves success. You can kind of think of this as a return. So after 3 seconds, it resolved the string success. So here I said my first promise, which executed this, and then when this is done, then capture the thing that was resolved. In this example, it was a success message, and I want to console.log yay and then success message. But I can keep going down this linear promise chain as long as I want to. So I can say return purple if I wanted to. And then after this I can say dot then. So the thing that was resolved out of here was purple, so I can say color. And I can pass this to print a color. I can pass color. And so here, I should be able to see after 3 seconds, yay, success, and then I pass purple to print a color, and it prints purple. Because promises inherently resolve one thing, you don't actually have to name the thing that comes back. So what I can do is just say, then print a color, and instead of me saying passing it a color, it inherently gets the thing that was resolved from the previous dot then. So if I run this again, you should see the same exact output. Let's take a look at another example. This time, I want to say const my second promise equals a new promise resolve reject. So inside of here, instead of having a linear promise chain, what I want to do now is have a branching promise chain so that if A does not depend on B, those two things can happen in parallel behavior. They do not have to go in sequential order. An example of this would be after you get the value back from the user, you want to both write it to the database and send it to an API. You don't need those two things to happen sequentially. You can have those things happen at the same exact time. So let's see what that looks like when we code it out. We're going to say set timeout. And inside of here, again, after 3 seconds, I want to resolve success. And then down below, let's see how this works differently. We're going to say my second promise, and then I say dot then, and then the thing I get out of here is the message, the success message in this example, and I want to console.log, again, a template role that says yay, success message. But I also want to say, while that's going on, so after my second promise resolves, I also want to dot then say again, capture the success message. And this time, I want to do something else, but I want these two things to happen on different threads. I want them to happen at the same time. So I want to be able to say console.log success message dot to uppercase. So now if we run this, what you're going to see is you're going to see yay success, and then you're also going to see success in all uppercase. The uppercase one will always happen second because it was coded after this one. But here's the important thing. This is not dependent on this. If this takes longer than this, then this could happen first. This is no longer required to wait until this is done. Let's see what that looks like when we run it. So after 3 seconds, I see yay success and then success in parallel. Or in all uppercase. Again, the uppercase one was not dependent on this one being resolved first. They can happen at the same exact time. Let's do one more example. This time, we're going to actually call a real live web API, and we're going to have some fun. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to install an Npm package. So I've already gone through and created this project to be an Npm project by saying Npm init. If you've never done that before, you'll just run this command, and then you'll answer the yes/no questions, and you can type out some things if you want. And by the end of that, what you'll get is a package.json. And so what this allows you to do is then you can install things from Npm. And so the thing that we're going to need to have is we're going to Npm install fetch. So I'm going to say Npm I or install node fetch save. And so now what this allows me to do is to say we're going to go actually call some Star Wars API. So the API that we're going to call, I'll show it to you real quick. So it's swap I dot co slash API slash films. And so what that really looks like is this. So I get a list of Star Wars information, right? So I get A New Hope is the first movie in a period of Civil War. You know how that goes. It's directed by George Lucas and all sorts of Star Wars information. So this is a fun piece of API that you can work with that doesn't require an API key. So we're going to use this in order to demonstrate the rest of this lesson. So we're going to say const make Star Wars API call equals an arrow function that takes in no parameters. And then inside of here, we're going to say return new promise and we're going to say resolve and reject. And so inside of here, we're going to say const URL equals, and then this is http //swapi.co /API/films. This is the URL we were just on. And then I want to say fetch. This is the Npm package that we installed, and I'm going to say URL. And so then the thing I'm going to get out of here is, after that's done, I got a response. And so what do I want to do with that response? I want to say return response dot JSON. So I want to return my response into a JSON. And because this is an arrow function that only is doing one line of logic with a return, I can turn this into a single line arrow function. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to take this away and I'm going to say put this all the way up here. And so I want to say when you get the response back from the API, I want to say turn that API or that response into a JSON. And then after I have a JSON, I want to grab some information out of it. So I'm going to say const first film title equals JSON at 0 dot title and then I want to say resolve first film title. And then if anything happens, I want to dot catch. This is how you deal with your errors. And I want to catch the error. And in this example, I want to console.log the error. So let's see what this looks like when we call it. So I'm going to say API promise equals make Star Wars API call, and then down here I want to say API promise dot then. So I'm going to get the first movie title out of here and I'm going to catch it and I'm going to say out of this resolution message I want to console.log the resolution message. So the last thing I need to do before I can run this is I need to require the thing that I pulled down from npm. So I'm going to say const fetch equal to require, and it's called node fetch, as it was when we installed it. And so here, if I run this code, I should see A New Hope, as we wanted it to be. So it returned back the first movie title from the API. Well, what else can we do with this? Well, we can write a function called const print in all caps. Is an arrow function that takes in thing to print or what to print. And then inside of here, it's going to console.log what to print dot to uppercase. What else can we do with this? So then I'm going to here, after I console.log the thing I just had, I'm going to say return. I can continue to pass things to the next dot next, and then I want to dot then. The thing I get next is the last returned thing, and I want to print that all in caps. And then dot catch. If there's a problem, I want to catch it and deal with it. So I'm going to say console.log error. And if I run this again, you should see A New Hope, and I can continue to pass things to the dot next, or the next dot next.